Welcome back, everyone, to the Consistent AK podcast, season 4. Nick and I are here for another season, and we're going to go in depth on Daredevil season 1 from Netflix, which is now on Disney Plus. So we'll also have a bit of pop culture at the end. We're going to be talking about The Bear season 2, which was just on Disney Plus. I'm going to talk about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film, Mutant Mayhem, and yeah. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and here we go. With a brand new season of the Consistent AK podcast. We have a few things just to go over first before we dig in. So we've changed it up a little bit. We are now joined forces and under the umbrella of the fantastic Get Your Comic On team. So we have new places where our podcast will be available, and the guys there will just be helping us along the way as well. So we're very excited to be with them. They do podcasts, their own podcasts, which are always fantastic and like have so much going on. The team they've got big links to DC and everything, so really interesting. And they've got a fantastic website which gives you all the latest news on comics, films, television shows, and so we're very happy to be part of that team and a wider scope of things going on there as well. We've also changed up how we're going to do our episodes as well, right? So we're going to do bi-weekly episodes. That is the plan. Yeah. And rather than giving you an in-depth episode and then a pop culture episode, we're going to combine them. But our main focus will be on our in-depth series, which, as we said in the intro, is on Daredevil season 1 from the old Netflix MCU days. And we'll just throw a little bit of pop culture at the end. So Nick and I will both share some thoughts on a few things that have been going on over the couple of weeks before we record the podcast. I guess we should introduce ourselves as well for people that are new, because we're going to reach the dizzy heights of listeners and new people who have probably never heard us before, and people that are coming back may want us to reintroduce ourselves as well. So you go first, Nick. Who are you?
Who am I? Good question. Who are any of us? No, I'm Nick. Yes, if you've listened to the podcast before, I have a lot of views on the MCU, which Luke loves.
He loves Civil War.
And I'm a comic book writer, and I've dabbled in a few other things as well. But generally, you can find me talking nonsense about writing pretty much 24/7. It's a problem.
Wonderful.
Problem. Yeah. Who are you?
Who am I? I mean, I'm Luke. So I'm what is probably the most interesting thing about me. I mean, there's lots of things, but what people will find during these podcasts is so I'm originally from England, but I live in Norway. So often Nick and I will see things maybe at different times because some things release earlier or later compared to England. So I live here, and I'm a manager of a comic book shop. And I've written a little bit of comics myself, but it's definitely more of a side hustle than like a main thing that I do. So that's what I do. I'm a big geeky nerd at heart. Massive comic fan. Like that is like my bread and butter of my existence. If I was to people who are watching us on YouTube, if I was to swing the camera around this room, it would just be full of comics. So that's me. And then Nick and I have been friends for a long time, and we both grew up in the same place in England, in Stratford-upon-Avon. And just like a love of comics and sort of pop culture stuff was together. And then one day we were just like, instead of just talking all the time about it, let's do a podcast. And then we've done 3 seasons. So the Consistent AK podcast, we've had loads of episodes, a few different incarnations of what we do. And if you want to listen to our old stuff, you can find us.
We're definitely
around.
not consistent. Let's put it that way.
We're definitely not
We've
consistent.
changed things around so much.
We're the opposite. So we've done in-depths on the Batman films, and we just did the View Askew universe films, the Kevin Smith films, and we've done loads. In our first season, we just did a whole bunch of like random subjects, from comic writers to standalone films to all sorts. So give us a listen. You can find us on all social media, or maybe not all social media, as Twitter will be leaving our atmosphere over the next few weeks. So yes, that's us. Sure dragged that out, didn't I, Nick? We've probably lost listeners already.
What I took away from that was that you said that writing comics is a side hustle, and it made Lone Tales feel slightly dirty. Like a weird.
Well, Lone Tales is slightly dirty, isn't it? So I don't know how much we'll talk about Lone Tales, but it might pop up all the time. We did a Kickstarter for a comic called Lone Tales, which is not actually dirty, but it was definitely a side hustle. So our main thing that we're going to talk about is well, actually, I will tell you just two more things about the Consistent AK podcast, right? Or maybe three. One, we're very bad at telling you that we're going to talk about things and say that it's spoilers, because everything we talk about is a spoiler. So if you're new to this and we forget to tell you it's a spoiler, then forgive us. The second thing is, I am absolutely terrible with names, not the character names, but the actor or actresses' names. I will not remember 9 times out of 10. Nick, you're pretty good at it, but I think you just pity me half the time and you just pretend. Whereas our good friend Harry, who's been on previous episodes, will like hound me about it for like years. And the other thing which we said is, although we try and stick to a topic, we often, and again it's usually down to me, we spiral. We'll start here and then we'll go round, and then there should be a circle, a loop all the way around to the beginning, but it doesn't. It kind of just, it's like the TVA. We try and keep it on track, but there are branches, and we're basically fucked. We also swear a lot. I swear a lot. So anyway, so that's us. We're consistently not okay, but we'll just own the name Consistent AK Podcast and hope that Get Your Comic Con don't lose faith in us right now. So this in-depth, so we're going to do 13 episodes for season 4. We're going to be doing Daredevil season 1. Why are we doing Daredevil season 1, Nick? Tell everyone why we're doing Daredevil season
1. Besides the fact that both of us love it, and we didn't have the Consistently OK podcast when it was airing. It wasn't even a thing. And the other reason is that Daredevil Born Again is in production, writer's strike. I don't know what it's
on hiatus.
Exists for now. Kind of happening. And we both thought, we usually like our in-depths kind of build up to something. As Luke said, Batman 1 sort of built up to the Batman, and View Askew was because Clerks 3 had just come out. And so for this one, it was kind of just a good chance to revisit Daredevil before Born Again. And I think after watching Daredevil and She-Hulk as well, we were both kind of itching to look at Daredevil properly.
I think it's interesting because we don't plan on doing season 2 and season 3 unless like people will say, can you please do season 2? We'll change it up for the next in depth, and during the season, like we will ask if people have any ideas of what they want us to do. But it's just to focus on this season, and yeah, I think because it is, what is it, 2015 it came out, so it's quite a while ago now, so it's quite interesting to watch this back now from where the Netflix MCU was, which was linked to the MCU at the time, to where it is now. So this first episode that we're going to talk about, so we're going to talk about, we're not going to go frame by frame. When we say in depth, we mean that we're going to just focus on this specific like this thing, like this show, this film, this director, whatever. So it's not frame by frame, it's not minute by minute, it's just, this is the episode, we've watched it back, and we're going to talk to you about what we think about it. So yeah, I guess was there anything else we had to go over at the beginning, Nick, before we get started and I forget all the actors and actresses' names?
I don't think so. I think knowing us, if there is, we're just going to randomly say it at some point during the podcast and be like, "Oh, and by the way, there's this."
By the way, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's go in then. So,
yes,
as I said just moments ago, so Daredevil came out on Netflix at the time. For people who don't know or haven't seen it, spoilers. See, first episode. But it's so Marvel started picking up a lot of the rights back to getting things back so they can tie it into the MCU. So that Fox had things like X-Men and Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider, and they had rights to Daredevil and things like that. So eventually these rights started coming back over, but for Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, those rights were picked up, and Netflix developed a series for these characters. At the time, MCU was doing very well. It still does very well now, technically, but it was quite early days. So Avengers was out in 2012. Yeah. So this is 3 years after Avengers. So we're sort of phase 2 area of the MCU when Daredevil lands on Netflix. But although it ties to the MCU, it's a very different feel to the MCU and anything that had come into the MCU at this point. There have been some darker things in the MCU since this, or attempts to, like Nick's favorite, The Multiverse of Madness, which is a horror film, right?
Is it
a horror film?
Was that right with a question mark? It's a horror film, right?
It's a horror film. It's a horror film for Nick because it terrified him to his core.
Oh, God.
So so this first episode then, so it's got a solid cast, which we're going to talk about, obviously. It looks great. The first episode is called Into the Ring, which is basically for Matt Murdock, who is Daredevil, who is played by the actor Charlie Cox.
Yes.
His dad is a boxer, so he is talking about getting into the ring, which is also a reference to Charlie Cox basically getting into the shoes of his vigilante alter ego, which is not called Daredevil at this point. He's only known as the Man in Black.
Yep.
So, Nick.
Hello.
The first episode, do you want to start with some thoughts on it? Do you want to just talk should we just throw some things around, or where do you want to go
from? Okay, so these points, one of these will run throughout the whole episode. It applies to the entire thing, and the other is very much about the opening. So
can I just say one thing? Sorry,
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what I want to point out as well is because we have both seen the whole of season 1, right?
Yes.
We probably will jump a little bit into memories from episodes that had to come, because it's only natural, because we've seen it, that we're like, we know this builds to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there will be fast forwards a little bit. So
yes,
so people know.
So the thing that gave me this point is I think the opening dialogue that Matt gives, or Charlie Cox performs, is so well written. And
is this in the confessional booth?
Yeah. And I just think it's so well written. It's performed really well. Obviously, like the way it's shot kind of gives you a sense of tone and just like how they're going to do this version of Daredevil. And when I was watching it, by the time you get to the end of that like monologue that he's kind of delivered, it just sort of made me feel like it's quite interesting to watch this after all of the MCU Disney shows, because it feels like just from this one scene there's a higher quality to it than the Disney shows.
I completely agree. It feels more like obviously you and I we're very, a lot of these shows are well written, they have their moments, but because the current MCU is so like it's a bit all over the place, right? It's very colourful as well. Like there's a lot of bright. This is, almost feels like straight away it's it's a superhero TV show, but it's like realistic, like it's dark and it's gritty, Hell's Kitchen, and he's in this booth, and it's like you're listening to you're hanging on every word he's saying.
Yes, definitely.
And it's super interesting compared to what we've seen recently in the Disney Plus films. Like you're already hooked. Like I rewatched this episode with my wife, who watches all the comic stuff with me, but she's sort of lost her way with the MCU stuff because she doesn't enjoy it as much as she used to.
Good.
But she was like, she just wanted to watch it with me. Like she enjoyed it again straight away, to the point where it's like you almost want to watch the next episode straight away, because when we watched this originally, we just binged it because we liked it so much. And it's like, that's how connected she became with it straight away, and so did I. It was like it's the quality of the writing and the time it gives it to breathe. That whole opening thing, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is just like perfectly paced, and I think it really kind of puts you in the sense of like, I guess it's like, it feels just like a drama. Like it immediately kind of just gives you this sense of they're taking this quite seriously. It's going to be kind of like a heavier take. You can tell that this character's got like weight to them, and there's sort of a sense of stakes, of personal stakes, and who they are and stuff. And that was the thing that just hit me. And then the rest of the episode, I feel like my kind of statement holds, where it feels like a certain level of quality that I don't think is a norm for the Disney Plus shows. It was really impressive, that opening bit, and I'd forgotten all about it. Like the other thing about this is that I have forgotten the majority of the season.
I remember it I think I remember it. I mean, I remember the first episode very well. I remember the confessional booth. I remember because of the church and everything. And look, it's like kind of out the comics and everything. The Hell's Kitchen church. I remember the first thing when I saw it, because the first bit is when there's the accident, right? So young Matt Murdock is on the ground, and there's been an accident, and he's going blind, and his dad is like trying to console him. But what I loved about that originally, and I think I saw it a second time in between this as well, and recently, is that they don't even take long to. It's not really an origin at this point. It's just like, he's a kid. He's been in an accident. They've established very early he's got hero qualities because he saved someone's life even as a young kid. So they've established that this kid has like a moral compass, and like that it's in him to be a hero. But it's come as a massive sacrifice because he's blind, and it just that whole scene is like 3 or 4 minutes long, but it's just so much to skip so much stuff. You kind of find it like with Tom Holland Spider-Man things, they could have done another origin for him, couldn't they? They could have gone right back to the beginning, but they passed it up because it wasn't needed. Like everyone knows that part of the story, and I think although people aren't probably as like savvy to the Daredevil origin story, like with the way the Disney Plus is now, they could have had like his origin story be dragged out for 5 episodes, and then only kick in the last episode. But with this, it's like he's origin story, then there's like a really nice confessional bit, and then it's almost straight to the action. The other bit I like about the confessional thing is the links to his dad and him becoming Daredevil, because he says that his dad can take a punch and he's never given up. If he gets hit down, he always gets back up again, which is what we see at the end of the episode, where Daredevil's in a fight, right? And then he has a flashback to his dad putting ice on his face. And Daredevil's like, I'm down, I've been kicked through a window, I've gone down like 5 floors, and he's like, but I get back up again. So the beginning of the episode ties in really well with the end of the episode, and kind of gives you that whole what Daredevil's about early doors. Like he's saved someone's life as a kid. He's taken that into his obviously he's got like enhanced senses and stuff, so he's taken that into his adult life. And the lesson he learned from his dad is to never give up, always get back up on your feet and everything like that. And I think it's such a nice beginning and end to the episode. Like that's the link to his dad, who obviously means a lot to him. So very, very very cool opening. Very very good setup to the beginning.
Yes, I 100% agree, and it's cool that both of us grabbed that as well. Like the opening was kind of the thing that we were both like, it really does set the tone, especially knowing what comes next as well in terms of like where the series goes.
It kind of feels like a classic, like a HBO show, right? Like The Wire type, like those like so well written early, like again, if you're saying it's a Disney Plus show, then that confessional scene is fluffier, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I also don't know if you'd get it. I feel like it would be like I feel like in a Disney Plus show it'd be like the end of an episode and they'd do it as like the dramatic end where he would be like, I'm not asking for forgiveness for the things I've done, I'm asking for things I'm going to do, and then it would like end there. And I feel like that would be it. It would be like that soundbite. It wouldn't be as like as well framed or as well kind of like progressed. And that's why I'm quite curious what they're going to do with Born Again. It's like whether you'll get this sort of thing in it.
I think they're gonna struggle with it, and I know that's gonna come up all the time in this this season. But is that how well received this was? Right, people were really excited to see Daredevil and She-Hulk as well, and it wasn't bad. They had the fight scene in the hallway there as well, like right where it was like good action. But because it's him and Kingpin are back in it, but because we've seen Kingpin and Hawkeye now, who is a bit of a different version of Kingpin as well.
Yeah.
Just how they don't go dark, and they've got Punisher in it as well.
Yeah.
Like
about that.
How do they not look at what they have with Netflix and think we just got to go for it? Like we have to make it what it is. I mean, but the first 10 minutes is this episode, and I think the episode was like 53 minutes, right?
Yeah.
You have Daredevil beating down, or the Man in Black beating down the Russian gang.
Yeah.
You have Dan Brown Wolf, Karen Page. Literally, the first shot she's in is a knife dripping with blood in a pool of blood, and she's screaming.
Yeah.
So you've got those two things which you just wouldn't get necessarily. Like you get maybe a fight scene in one of the MCU shows at the moment, but you wouldn't get like just the choreography alone is very good and like realistic. Like I know I'm saying realistic, and people are like, it's not realistic, is it? Because there's a blind man fighting crime, but the way it's done feels like realistic. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it just feels more down to earth than half the stuff. Like we're led to believe. And I know I read a lot of comics. I'm reading like all this stuff that's happening in the MCU shows and stuff, and I do like the MCU a hell of a lot. But it's just recently, and I think watching something like this is just like this is where the MCU has lost its way, right? Because this is how Daredevil should be done. This is how Punisher should be done. This is how Secret Invasion could have been done. This is how She-Hulk could have been introduced. This is what could have happened with Moon Knight. Like if they just followed a little bit of a different path, they would still have everyone eating out the palm of their hands.
Yeah.
But it's just too fluffy and colourful, and and not thought through.
No.
Anyway.
And speaking of that,
sorry,
because this kind of like brings me on to my next point, but obviously like the cast for the whole thing is great. Like pretty much everybody suits their role, but Karen and Foggy especially, I just think are perfect. Like,
I mean, I actually wrote here. Where did I write it down on my notes? I put Karen with loads of exclamation marks, and I said I miss Foggy and Karen already. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, like
I know just from like their first few scenes together.
Yeah, and I know it's kind of there's a lot of conjecture online as to like whether they're gonna be in it and whether it's a bit of a secret or whether they're not in it or whatever. But you got to think that if they're not, there has to be like a hell of a good of reason why you don't put the two of them in, because from just this first episode, they both have presence, they both have stakes, they both have like so much character that you instantly like them. Like
they're both. It feels like in that first interrogation scene where they're trying to get, they're like, we're your lawyers. Who's paid you? No, we'll do it for free. And Foggy's trying to leave. Then it feels like they're all on the same. Like there's no one above anyone else, right? They're all at the same level. Like Matt Murdock and Foggy, exactly the same level because they don't know he's a vigilante. Karen Page, like she's also like, there's no one's above anyone. Like they're all in the same boat. They're all. They need clients. She needs a lawyer. They're all in it together, and they bounce off each other so well, so quickly. I think you're right. I think if they're not in the show, then it's not the same Daredevil, is it? It's completely different. Doesn't matter if Kingpin's in it and Matt Murdock's in it, from Charlie Cox and what's his name,
Vincent D'Onofrio,
and John Brathnell as Punisher. You take away the core characters that made these 3 seasons of Daredevil really important, and then it's not the same.
Yeah, it's definitely not,
because they're so good in it. Like Karen, I mean, Deborah Ann Wolf, I thought she was fantastic in True Blood. Yeah, and she's great in this. Like a whole, it's like when she's in it, she's like constantly like theatre stage level.
Yeah, I feel like all of them are though. Like all of them sort of deliver this presence in their performances, where you just kind of think, it like recently, especially with the MCU, there's been a couple of performances where I've just thought it feels not phoned in, but it feels like they know they're in the MCU, and it's like they can be a little bit loose and kind of silly goose time or whatever. But in this, it's kind of like you could take the superhero element out of it, and you would get a really good crime series. Like you would get something that's really interesting because everybody's delivering performances, and the script's written in such a way that it just has so much nuance to it. And I think you're right that first scene between the 3 of them, and you get the sense of like all of them are trying to do something. Like Karen's trying to clear a name, and Foggy and Matt are trying to get a client for the first time and make the name for themselves. And there's a lot of like dancing in that conversation. And I always talk about this with writing, that good scripts are like, or good dialogue anyway, is like where it's a dance between people. Like we're going to talk about at the end of this episode, The Bear, season 2. The dialogue on that is like perfect. Like the dancing is just amazing. And I think you get that here. And that's the thing, that it's, if they remove that from Born Again, how do they replace it? What do they replace it with? Is it just replaced with, as you say, a bit more fluffy, kind of like, we're going to go down a bit more action route, and you don't get those scenes where it's a lot of like bounce your actors back and forth, which I could see it doing. Like I could see MCU kind of saying like, the thing that works for us is action, not talking heads. And
is action what works? The MCU, the way it works now, is action, like you said, high level CGI fight scenes at the end, but also like I guess Easter eggs. Like, and I'm a big fan of Easter eggs, but it's like who's the surprise appearance, right?
Yeah.
Can we keep that under wraps? People are going to come in because they've heard in Multiverse of Madness, spoilers, Mr. Fantastic's in it, and Black Bolt's in it, and everything like that. So that's my worry for Born Again, is that it's going to be more of a, is Foggy going to show up?
Yeah.
When's Punisher going to show up? Is Spider-Man going to drop in because he's they're supposed to maybe be doing a Daredevil Spider-Man film next? Like I think, and that's what, when I say about realistic with Daredevil, is that because the cast is so, it feels so unified, right? And like you're not waiting for the surprises, you're waiting for like the shocks and the twists, but not like a random person to show up or anything necessarily. And we all get, of course, there are moments like when I remember when I first watched it, and in they had the Avengers newspaper clippings, from the fight in New York. I was like, oh wow, it's linked. But this isn't that. It doesn't need too much of that in this, does it? It just needs the cast and the dialogue and the way they work together is enough to make this show feel so different. And what I was going to say as well is that in the Marvel comics itself, you have like the main Marvel, you have your superheroes, your Iron Mans, and your Captain Americas, and your Spider-Man, and your Captain Marvels. But then there is this sort of darker, seedy, like Marvel Knights underground, Hell's Kitchen. You know, your Luke Cages and your Daredevils and your Punishers and your Iron Fists and stuff. And there's a good reason why these should be separated, but I don't see why that can't be the case going forward either. Like I don't know, and my only worry is that the MCU has sort of shot itself in the foot because they've gone so quick now with, you know, they're going to add Deadpool in it. They've done the full breaking with She-Hulk and things like that. It's just like they've almost gone a little bit too far the other way, I think, for me. But I mean, that's something. It's just such a. I don't want to harp because I really do like the MCU stuff. So I'm not going to go on and on and on about it. But it's just lost its way a bit recently, I think, and that's not for any lack of like how people act or how some things are written. It's just the fact that it feels like they're just churning out so quickly without thinking. Like we said this in the last episode of season 3, right, or the penultimate episode when we talked about things. It's like their forward thinking seems to have gone out the window.
For sure.
So
yeah, I think that's the thing with this, is it almost, as you say, there are references to the wider MCU, but it feels very much like they're just telling their own story. Like there isn't an expectation of,
yes, that's exactly it. You're saying it right there. Yeah, that's it. There is no expectation.
Yeah, there's no kind of like, oh, this person's going to cameo, or this is going to happen, or it's going to set up this other thing. It's kind of like what this first episode does is it's just like, here's this like here's our portrayal of Daredevil, like here's this new version that we're putting on screen for you compared to the Ben Affleck film, and it's like that's what this opening does anyway. Is the opening is like, here's the version we're going to tell you, then it's kind of like briefly like, here's a bit of the MCU connection, even though pretty much all of these Netflix shows are barely connected. Like the more it goes on, it's like it might as well be a multiverse. And then when you start getting through the first episode, like the first episode only really has that one section of action, right, where he fights the Russians. Is there another bit as well?
There's action in the beginning or the whole episode?
Just it's the only action, is it when he fights the Russians, or is there another bit?
There's the Russians at the beginning. There's the end fight as well.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I was thinking
he fights the assassin, like going after Karen Page. But
Karen Page, yeah,
that's pretty much the only action. I mean, what this episode? Oh, sorry, you finish before.
No, sorry. I was going to say is like so much this episode is like, it's less action and it's more your talking heads. It's more you're introducing character, building, isn't it? And people.
Build. I wrote that about the end of the episode. It's established that there's a crime syndicate. Yeah, you've got these like four different crime gangs, and at the end, it's not like, okay, so he's beat that bad guy. It's like, this is just the beginning. Like you've got the Hand doing this, and the Hand plays a major role throughout all the seasons of Daredevil. You've got the Russians. You've got the guy who turns into the villain Owl. I only know him as the Owl. What's his name? Something Owlsy, I think his name is. I can't remember his name. You've got him doing the money, and then you've got William Fisk, all that stuff, and it's so clever because that's why you don't need the cameos necessarily. Is that because the build up for this whole season is Daredevil getting to Daredevil, and Fisk getting to the level of Kingpin, but you don't even see him in this first episode, right? First of all, he's just a person. Then he's just on the phone. And then the intrigue is there. That's what keeps you. That's what wants you to come back for the second episode, because you want to see like, well, where's this going to go? Like Karen and Foggy and Matt Murdock all happy sitting around a table having dinner now, but it's the first episode. Like more shit is going to come their way. Like it's just, I just think it's such a. I just wish we had more of it now, and I think that's what we've probably all missed recently. Like we all were on such a high from Endgame. Yeah, and then it's been a bit of a mixed bag since, but. It doesn't matter if you've got a couple of mixed bags. If you've got like a little gem, you go back to like we both agreed that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was that little bit of an injection that the MCU needed. I really hope that Born Again is what we are going to talk about now on Netflix, like that kind of same level. So it's like, well, we know there's this as well. So if this isn't your cup of tea, you've got this. Where I think the thing is like, if you like the MCU, you should like everything, right? Like if you don't like Ms. Marvel, then you won't like the MCU. But I don't think that should have to be the case. I think it should be like these things, like the darker stuff, should be included as well. And I would hate for them to take that away from us. I keep saying I'm not going to talk about the MCU, but I keep going back to it. I'm obviously feeling very bitter at the moment about the whole thing. One thing I said we'll go around in a circle, right? But we've obviously gone off on that. But one thing we didn't mention is something these Netflix shows do really well. Yes, and I never skip them. Is the intro music, right? And the graphics. So good. And like the theme, and especially at the end of this episode where it's like a longer version of the theme, but it's like teased and then it builds up more and more and more. I think they're fantastic. And I think the colors, obviously, because they're like Daredevil colors, all of the shows, the Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, Defenders, like all of the intros were Punisher. They're so good. They're like James Bond, dark Marvel stuff. That's like awesome.
Again, they all feel like all the Netflix stuff feels like they're connected to each other. Obviously, the same world because it kind of gives you the Defenders, but like even just their titles, you can tell it's part of the same thing. Like it's got that same feeling for all of them, which I think is really great. Like I think it is kind of like Daredevil sets the standard, and then it's like the rest just try and match it. And like some of them are hit and miss, some of them are good, and some are okay. But you always get the sense that tonally they're all the same thing. And that is very much set from music to intro visuals to like just way people kind of carry themselves. It's I agree that the sort of opening titles hard to skip for this, whereas for other things I can, like a lot of Marvel stuff I can skip.
The connections as well are interesting because you have Turk, he is in the beginning of this episode. He's the one who's like dealing with the Russians, but he turns up in all the other shows as well, right?
Yeah.
And you also have what's her name from The Matrix? I know her name's not Trinity in real life.
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Yes, she obviously pops up in a few things as well. So that's this whole little world that's built. I'm curious because you said it, and I did think about it when I was watching this as well. I know it's going back to the MCU, but I wonder if that's how they do play Born Again. Like, it's like sort of like the Flash that we just saw the film, where it's like different versions of people they look the same, but they are in a different reality. But I wonder if that's how they play it. Like the Fisk that we saw in Hawkeye is different to the Fisk that we know from Netflix, and the Matt Murdock in the Netflix is different to the one that we saw in No Way Home and She-Hulk. Like like they've not crossed paths before in the MCU universe, but they've got this history, and just happens that in this Netflix universe as well, Chitauri attack New York as well, and they have their own version of the Avengers, right? And all of these things, because I know some of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. crossover into the Netflix show, but there hasn't been much of that in the MCU since that went down and everything. So I wonder if that's how they'll play it out eventually, like different versions, variants.
So speaking of Karen, by the way, and just in terms of like visuals and stuff, the scene with her and Matt in his apartment, and it's like lit by that thing, that looks amazing. Really cool. Like that feels very comic booky as well, where it's kind of like it feels like it's been pulled from a page in terms of lighting and just the way everything's working. But then to give it a story reason, like to give it a reason why it looks like that, and it's because of this thing, and that's how we got the apartment and stuff. I just felt like that was really smart. Just it was sort of all landed. None of it felt kind of unbelievable.
I think it's a really good scene because you get a lot from it. You almost get Karen. You can see the way Karen looks at Matt Murdock, as in she already has a bit of a, like, I don't want to say like she fancies him, but like she's drawn to him. Like there's something that really intrigues her, not just because he's blind, but like the way he talks when he takes off his glasses, and it's like she has this whole heap of just, I don't know, like it's not charming, but there's just like she just sees him. It's like she just sees him as someone quite incredible, even that early on. I also love the scene where he's testing her and he's listening to her heartbeat pace up and down. Like that's a really cool, obviously a trait that's like really cool thing that Daredevil obviously can do. And it's interesting that obviously he uses those tactics usually in the courtroom as well. Like he does it in comics and stuff, and we've seen him do it he probably did it in the Daredevil film from Fox and stuff. I think he did, or other things, but it's just a smart way to do it. Obviously, with he does it in the end fight as well when he's listening to the change of the knife. Like he uses his hearing. So I love the bit where he's like listening to Karen's heartbeat because she's obviously been through quite a lot already, and her heartbeat's quite calm because she's relaxed finally. And then he pressures her into like, "Do you have this document?" It's like, dun, 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 dun. Like I really like that, and just the whole look, like you said. Feels a bit like Blade Runner with a billboard, like for a little second. But it's just smart to have that. And and just like the the confidence that she's going to take her top off in front of him. She's like, oh, he's blind and everything like that. But it's just there's a lot of I remember reading from is it Stephen DeKnight? Is that the guy? I think it's his name.
Yeah,
Who, like is the showrunner and stuff. He was like they didn't want to go overly sexual like in the first season. Like that wasn't what it was about. Also, like not trying to hit like some of the comics like the Born Again comic and stuff like that. They wanted to try and make it its own thing by just making it look like a comic, like a dark comic. But I just thought it was interesting that they didn't. They actually do more like sexually oriented things as the show goes on.
And it progresses,
there's a few more things. But speaking of, sorry, just not trying to sexualize it, but like violence as well. Like it's very quick on the violence, not just with the blood, but like obviously the fact that it's trafficking women as well at the beginning and things like that, using blind, essentially slave workers. The drug factory and everything like that, and all those sorts of things, and that the strangulation of Karen Page in the prison cell, and then the fact that guy. I mean, that's so fantastic about the end scene as well, is that it's tying up so many loose ends quite quickly. And one really fucking great scene, right? I know you know how much I love this character, but Wesley, Kingpin's right hand man or assistant, that scene on the bench. It's so scary. Like it's so casual about it. It's like, look at this screen, right? So those of you who haven't seen it, it's like Wesley is Kingpin's right hand man. He's asking a guy to basically come good on his word, and then he's very calm. He's like, sit down, look at this iPad screen, basically, and it's a video link to his daughter who's in a park. And not only is it a video link to the daughter, he makes the dad call the daughter so he knows it's live. Also, in the same shot, the guy that could potentially kill his daughter is sitting on another park bench next to his daughter. So good. And Wesley, in the whole season, he's so good. And I don't think anyone is like perfect casting. You talk about strong cast, like that guy makes that role just crisp and like great. And I can't wait to see like his scenes again in this season. Even on the phone and stuff like that, and when he has the meeting with the mafia bosses, it's almost like he's almost out of his comfort zone. You can clearly see, because he keeps reiterating like he wants me to do this and he says this and things, but they're getting more agitated with him. But he just, although he looks scared, he doesn't really flinch. He's kind of like, this is what he wants. And like just the name, just knowing that this guy or Fisk is in charge makes the other guys not go within two feet of him, basically. So
I think you're right there as well.
I've really gone. You talked about that scene in the apartment. I've again gone way past that.
No, I think you're right though, that like perhaps that's again with the tone of it, the fact that they do like such sinister things quite up front. Like it's like first episode, here's like sex worker like forced into it, whatever you want to call it, I can't remember the term. Like here's Kingpin sort of running all of that. Here's the group of people who seem to just not have a moral compass about it at all, that it's just like that's business. And it sets all of that up in the first episode, and so you sort of know immediately you're dealing with things on a kind of like darker level, as you say, where it's just kind of like your run-of-the-mill, villain of I just want to take over the world or whatever it is, isn't really these guys. These guys are more like, we want to control New York, essentially, and doing that means working together with all of these people and doing some really dodgy shit that's about control and about kind of getting people on. And like I think it's in the first episode as well, but that scene where is it Madame Gao? Is that her name?
Madame Gao,
she just walks down that line of people and they're like weighing the drugs or doing whatever.
So at the end, that's when they're like wrapping up the last like what each gang is doing. So the Russians kidnap the boy, which is also really cool. The last scene with Matt Murdock, when he hears the boy screaming, they're doing those things. That's like really cool.
That's a scene where it's just like, that's really dark, because she's so like calm and composed walking down that thing, and you get the sense that all of these people are afraid of her. Like all these people are just afraid to do anything but the job that they're there for. Whether they're there to actually do it because they want to, or whether because they've been forced into it. And that's the kind of like world that you suddenly get placed in this first episode, is that it's like it's a real world of like crime and corruption, and it's not going to be an easy breezy kind of thing. Yeah,
it's good. I really like the whole setup for everything. I like the fact as well that Fisk, he actually doesn't really give a shit about Foggy and Murdock, but he's like, retain them, like keep them on file. They may become in use. Don't worry about Karen anymore. She's not going to say anything. We already got everything from her. So he's almost the guy that's like, he would have killed Karen, but now because she's done everything, he actually doesn't give a shit. It's just shit on the bottom of his shoe.
Yeah.
So I really liked the fact that you don't see him and he has that much control. And also, like I said, it's not all, you know, there's nothing more than just a lot of very good direct conversations that keep you interested and wanting to see more. And the thing is, what this series does, and as we go through it, is that it finds the perfect balance between when it has to be a lot of great dialogue and when it has to be like a really good fight scene, rather than just every episode has to end with a really good fight scene. Every episode has to end with like something monumental to happen. Because in the next episode, the best scene in the whole series, fight scene, is like close to the end of the episode, I think, but it's not the end of the episode. The hallway scene. I think that's in episode 2, at least.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it's not at the end, is it?
Yeah, it's towards the end of the episode.
Yeah, but it's not like the climatic ending. It doesn't end with him, or does it? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, no, I think it does, because he goes in and gets the kid and then leaves with the kid.
And that's the end of the episode?
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I watched it the other day. And but you're going to watch it, so you'll tell me on the next one.
Not every episode, Nick, right? That's my point. Not every episode has to end with a big climatic fight scene.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, it's the way I look like a fool already, but not every episode.
I could be wrong. Like when you watch it, see if I've remembered it wrong, because it's been a few.
I'll start the next episode with like, fuck. So anyway, but I think that does well. I think they're very good at balancing like the great dialogue scenes with the fight scenes when they're necessary. It would have been very easy for this episode just to be loads of like the Man in Black beating the shit out of criminals, right? And then Kingpin showing up at the end and just doing something, but they're just planting seeds, and it's very good. And I really enjoyed this episode, and I cannot wait to watch more.
Yes, definitely. I'm ready.
Yes, you are ready.
Ready.
So that's us. Well, I think we're done talking about the first episode of Daredevil, so we'll carry on with it. We're going to watch episode 2, and then we'll release that one in 2 weeks from when this episode releases. So before we wrap up this episode, we'll just do a little bit about talking some other things that we've seen recently. One thing that you and I both watched, talking about great dialogue. So for anyone who's new, Nick and I are really into this TV show called The Marvelous Miss Maisel, which has some of the best writing on television and the best acting in television. And I feel like a very close comparison to this show is The Bear, which is I don't know what it's on in America. I think it's Hulu, maybe.
I think it's FX, isn't it?
FX. So we have it on Disney Plus here in Norway, and I believe it's the same in England. It's just this show that is absolutely frantic, with some fantastic dialogue, with some of the best direction. It looks great, and it's just although I thought season 2 maybe started off a little bit slow, right? It didn't take long to be fully engaged and know what it was trying to be. And I had these calmer episodes, like when the dessert chef, I can't remember his name, Marcus? Is it?
I think it's
when
Marcus.
he goes to Amsterdam? No, Copenhagen? Jesus Christ. And that episode with Will Porter. Fucking hell. I didn't write notes on this, guys. It's all from my head. That's a really nice episode. I just think there's so many strong episodes. The episode when Cousin is washing the forks and everything like that.
So
Great
good.
episode.
Yeah.
It's so good. For people who haven't seen it, you have to. I'm telling everyone, like my family, my mates, I'm telling them all to check it out because it's high quality. Like it really is high quality. And I love the fact I was saying this to my wife, like Olivia Colman.
Right, yeah.
I really like Olivia Colman. I think she's come so far from like Peep Show and stuff. And she's won Oscars and she's like popped up in some incredible films, but it must be, I feel like she's such like a gem when she's just pops up in these shows like randomly, because she comes up in quite a few things.
Yeah.
And I didn't know she was in it. I had no idea she was in it.
Yeah.
When she just popped up in this episode, I was like, oh, I see Olivia Colman. We just seen her in Secret Invasion, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just, even though her bit was so slight, it was so well written, and it was just, there's no music in the background. It's just these two characters, this guy called Cousin and her, and they're just talking, they're just peeling mushrooms, which sounds really mental if you've not seen it and completely out of context, but it's so well watching because this is one of these shows that when you watch an episode, you almost think sometimes like, okay, I've got to turn my life around. Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to change everything I do. I'm going to go into my shop tomorrow where I'm a manager and we're going to do it like this. Everyone's going to say, yes, chef. And it's that's because everyone calls me boss man. They don't, not because I make them call me boss man, but it's like a joke, like that I'm boss man. And I'm going to make them say it with like, yes, boss man. But there's loads of it's just a wonderful show. You obviously love it as well, Nick. Yes.
Yeah, I am gushing over it. Yeah. Also, is Boss Man a reference to wrestling, as in the character?
No, I don't. I don't think it is the Big Boss Man. I wish that was the case, but I don't think any of my staff watch wrestling or know of it. It just there were a lot of nicknames battered around for ages, right? So there are a few nicknames, and then one of the staff just kept calling me Boss Man, and then all of a sudden it kind of caught on. So that's what it is now.
Nice. But yeah, the bear. So we watched season 1. I think I talked about it in a previous episode in season 3. Very recently, myself and my partner, and we both loved it. And he wasn't sure about it. I remember when we watched the first episode, he was like, "Okay, yeah, probably." And then I think we got the second, third in, and he was like, "This is really good." And for the whole of the second season, we were both just like absolutely engrossed in it. Like the dialogue's amazing. It's got uplifting moments in the right places. It's got one really heavy episode this season. There's like an episode that's like an hour long. They're all about 20 minutes, but this one's like an hour.
It's such a good episode as well. It's really intense. Like it's uncomfortably intense.
Yeah, like we were talking about John Bernthal playing the Punisher, but he pops up in this as a character, and Jesus, it's like,
and Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, amazing. This season,
that episode is going to win. It's going to win awards, isn't it? But there are, you could argue, case for like so many characters winning awards for their parts in it.
Yeah,
who is it? Soul Bob. What's his surname? Guy who plays Soul in Breaking Bad.
Well, Bob Odenkirk.
Yes, Bob Odenkirk. Yeah, he's very good in it.
Yeah.
Even the guy. I've never seen the actor before, and I can't remember his name in the TV show. But the guy who gives the speech at the dinner.
Yeah. That's the guy that does. I've forgotten his name, but he does Spider-Ham in Spider.
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It does,
in his name. Yeah, that will come back to me at some point. But yeah, I thought he was great. That whole episode was just like so many random people popping in. Where I was like, what? Where did these people come from?
Yeah.
And it
because I had I fucking can't remember anyone's names now, but what's his name from American Horror Story was in as well. Is it Sarah Perslow?
I didn't watch American Horror Story, so I don't know.
Oh no, she's fantastic in it. I just can't remember her name.
Oh no, she plays the wife of the guy.
She's the aunt. She's his auntie. I think,
yeah, Sarah Paulson. Yeah, it is Sarah Paulson.
Yes.
I saw her in Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
And
good season that.
So good. I wish there was more. Speaking of good writing, but that whole episode is like just everybody popping in. Everybody delivers amazing performances, but then as you say, like the rest of the season, it's like there are so many good episodes where it's like they all do their own thing. And and the ending, the like season 2 finale, is like equally uplifting and heartbreaking. And I like when I watched it, I was like, I don't know how you achieve that in a piece of writing. Like, how do you give me the sense of like yes, but also crippling oof?
Well, because
Because
it's fantastic. Because they turn like Cousin's role. Like you feel so good for him in that episode.
yeah,
He's such a fucking pain in the ass. But season one
mm,
and the
mm,
majority of season two, until he has that
yeah,
experience in the restaurant, the big restaurant,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then you're just really rooting for him all of a sudden. And when they're arguing at the end, him and his cousin in the fridge, it's just like you actually feel my cousin is right. Like
yeah. The Kami's mess.
his
Yeah,
Kami's mess. Yeah, Kami's a mess, and he's like on the up, and
mm,
it's brilliant. It's
yeah.
really brilliant.
And I like love that. I can't remember. I saw somebody talk about it where they were saying that it's like a you can look at the bear as like an analogy for like creative projects or like sort of being in a writer's room or something where it's like there's the sort of frenetic excitement, it's loud and it's kind of like you're bouncing ideas and everybody's trying to kind of do their best. um and you've got people who are good at one thing, you've got people who are good at others. And I feel like that season 2 finale and like Kami's dialogue where he's like, the reason I got to where I am is because I don't like have the other thing. He's like, I've got this, and like that's my priority. And I think he gives the line where he's like, I'm a fucking psycho. And I just thought like you can totally see that like in art and kind of anything creative where it's like obviously some people can find the balance, but for some people it's like it's to do what they want to do, it's got to be everything, and
A
they've got to
sacrifice, isn't it?
yeah. And I just feel like that's kind of your downer for that season 2 finale is that like the restaurants obviously worked for them, but for him it's like he's lost the girl, which so much of this season was about him and Claire. um
Yeah.
and the writing just kept surprising me. It kept just being like, how does this get better and better? And it just does. Like every episode is just like wow. And as you say, like
I really wanted him not to lose the girl, though. I really wanted it to not happen. I really wanted it to be teased. Like that whole episode, you think he's going to choose just to his restaurant, but then it,
it'll
even though I didn't want it to happen, it really worked when he listened to the voicemail,
yeah,
and it was like just fuck. But
yeah,
yeah, just
it's
it was really good.
yeah. And like as you say, like the bit with Olivia Colman was great. Like I'm not the biggest Olivia Colman fan, but I think
I really like her.
when she does it right, I'm like, that's amazing. And so I thought that was great. And the thing with Will Poulter as well, that was like so layered. Like the way he starts and he's quite like stoic and like do it again, and kind of whatever. And then he warms to him, and it's like by the end of that thing, he's kind of got a rapport. And I really like the sort of layer of um when he's talking about he and Kami and how he was like, I realized one day like I'm not the best and like that's okay or whatever. But
I
then
didn't
you
realize
realize,
that was Kami. For
oh, did you
it
not
was
until the
my wife
photo?
Yannicka caught. No, it was before that. It was
Okay.
during the episode. Yeah, when he was talking, when he was doing it with Marcus, he was doing he was
Hmm.
talking. My wife Yannicka was like, oh, he's talking about Kami, and I was like,
Uh,
ah, I get it. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
she clocked it way quicker than I did.
Yeah, and I
Um,
thought it was really nice because it's but his whole thing is like you see it from his side, but even though you don't know what Kami's side of it is, it's obviously that he feels like Will Poulter's character is actually kind of the best because he sent Marcus to him. So it's
yeah,
like he's kind of they're both people who are kind of like think that weren't as good as each, like one wasn't better than the other kind of thing. Um, and I just thought that's amazing, like to be able to do that in a way without saying it, like in a way without kind of like Kami ever going like, oh, he's the best or whatever. It's like you just know that Kami has this level of respect that he's like, I sent Marcus there for a reason. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so good. The whole thing, I was just like, this is just insane. Like,
I feel
just
like with the cameos as well. I feel like these are actors and actresses that are like kind of pushing to be part of it as well because they've probably seen season one and were
yeah,
like, that was bloody good. That was
yeah,
like, if there's ever an appearance I can do, I'm in. Like,
yeah,
yeah, that's the way. But yeah, brilliant stuff.
yes,
The only thing I want to talk about towards the end of this is something I saw, and I'm only going to talk for it very briefly because A, you haven't seen it, Nick,
mm-hmm.
and B, we don't have enough time. I went to see the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem film, and it was really good. So if there are people that think it's for kids, it's not. It's like as much for adults as it is for kids. The animation is fantastic. It's like this kind of like scribbly animation, and it's very different from Across the Spider-Verse, but you'll walk out of it, if you're a fan of like turtles and comics in general, you'll walk out thinking like, thank God that we how blessed we all are, right, that we've had these two films this year, like two different styles of animation, both with, I mean, Across the Spider-Verse has such a great story. This has a good story, but it's funny. This is like, I laughed out loud at least 3 or 4 times during this because the humor was so spot on, because these turtles are teenagers. They're not trying to be adults. They're trying to be teenagers. That's what they want to be, but also learning their roles and how they can save humans without being hated, basically. That's about like, it's like massively about acceptance. And Jackie Chan is Splinter, and he is really, really fucking funny.
Nice. You've also got a Bear alum, haven't you? Girl that plays Sydney plays.
She's April O'Neil.
Yeah, she's cool casting. That's great. I can see
she's
that.
Good. She's really good as April O'Neil as well. Yeah. It's really, really good. All the cast are good. I mean, some of them have really small roles, like Seth Rogen, John Cena's Bebop and Rocksteady. They only have like a handful of lines and stuff. But the Ice Cube is Superfly, who's the main villain, is really good. Even Post Malone, he's Ray Fillet, and he only sings like a few times, but he's very funny as well. So it's just really fun. Like the whole thing is really fun. So
yeah, I will check it out. I will check it out.
Yes, great. All right, so that's it for this episode. Our in-depth on Daredevil season 1, episode 1. We'll be doing our next episode in 2 weeks' time, so it'll be episode 2. So we're looking forward to that. If you want to hear more from us and find our old episodes from season 1, 2, and 3 on our other in-depths, you can find all of our old stuff on wherever you get your podcasts. So just search for Consistently OK Podcast. YouTube, you can see us in person because we've got our videos up online. So you can just search for Consistently OK Podcast. You can find us on Threads at Consistently Pod and Instagram Consistently Pod. And we're also going to revive our Substack in the next few weeks. So we'll have updates about that. We are, however, going to be stopping using Twitter, which we'll update when we stop using that as well. And our good friends at Get Your Comic Con, who we now join forces with, their podcast drops next week, and they're going to talk about Blue Beetle because the review embargo will be up. So you can join Neil and co, and they'll go into that with you. So please check them out. And that's it, I think, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think we've got anything else.
Wonderful. All right. Well,
yes, chef.
I will. Yes, chef. Thank you. Yes, boss man. Then I will go and watch episode 2 of Daredevil and fall on my sword if that hallway scene is at the end of the episode.
Or you'll stab me.
Yeah, or I'll get you, yeah. So thanks everyone for listening. Old listeners, if you've carried on listening to us, new ones if you're just joining us, and we look forward to doing more over the next few weeks.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
Thanks, dude.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I don't know what that was. Oh no, it's too late. It's out there. All right. Bye.
Bye.